Dear learners and listeners, welcome to this session. I am Dr. G. Uma, faculty in the School of Gender and Development Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Today's topic is affirmative action towards gender equality. This topic is part of the course Gender Sensitization, Society, Culture and Change. The course code of this course is BGSC 001. Welcome to this session. When you hear the term affirmative action, you all must be wondering what is affirmative action. Before we learn about affirmative action, let us little bit go back to the what are the efforts taken at the international level to address the affirmative action. Then we will go to the definition or how to define or how to understand affirmative action. In the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination stipulates in Article 2.2 that affirmative action programs may be required for countries that have ratified convention in order to rectify systematic discrimination. The United Nations Human Rights Committee states that the principle of equality sometimes requires state parties to take affirmative action in order to diminish or eliminate conditions which cause or help to perpetuate discrimination prohibited by the covenant. Now, we understood the affirmative action taken at the international level, which was initiated by the United Nations. Just let us see what is the learning objective of this session. First one is to explain the importance of affirmative action. That is the first learning objective. You all come from a different discipline or different background. All of us must understand the significance of affirmative action. The second objective is to describe the measures taken by the various agencies, including the Government of India and the international agencies like United Nations, based on the principle of affirmative action. These are the two significant learning objectives as far as this session is concerned. Affirmative action, let us define what is affirmative action, how to describe the affirmative action. So, affirmative action is not a right that is equally available to everyone. So, you should not think that the affirmative action is available for everyone and the government will make certain policies and programs to benefit everyone in the society. That is not the affirmative action. Affirmative action is not the right that is equally available to everyone. It is a special need only for people who have been the victims of institutionalized inequality. Like for example, if you take an example of women, the women are not treated on par with the male members in the society. They were facing various discrimination just because they belong to certain gender or they considered as women. So, that inequality persists centuries after centuries. So, they need a special need to compete or to compete with others, especially male members in the society, and they need a special certain kinds of policies and programs to come up or to equally access all the services with regard to health or education or economically. If the women want to empower like a male members in the society, they need a certain special programs and policies. So, it is a special need only for people who have been the victims of institutionalized inequality. The framers of Constitution of India, they are very well conscious of the fact that the pitiable condition of women cannot be improved only by prohibiting discrimination on the ground of sex. So, the framers of constitutions, they very well understood that it is not possible just to make certain policies to prohibit discrimination on the ground of sex. More than that, the state has to make necessary policies and programs to improve the women's status and condition. They felt that special protection should also be given simultaneously to women. Thus, it was provided under clause 3 of the Article 15 that, quote, nothing in Article 15 clause 1 shall prevent the state from making any special provision for women and children, unquote. The clause empowers the state to make laws in favor of women. On the Article 15(3), a number of statutory provisions in favor of women which were challenged as violative of Article 14 have been upheld by the courts. These include provisions exempting women from punishment of adultery, provisions giving special rights to women in respect of bail, provisions authorizing service of summons on men only, provisions for maintenance of women only, and provisions for reservation of seats for women in local bodies or educational institutions. So, the framers of Indian Constitution have advanced two justifications for laws discriminating in favor of women. Firstly, the discriminations were not based solely on sex but also on other factors such as the weaker position occupied by women, and secondly, these laws were framed to compensate for past discrimination and disabilities suffered by women as a class. The framers of the Constitution have very well recognized the disparities in economic conditions between men and women. The Constitution of India under Articles 38.1, 39, 42 lays down the guidelines for legislations through directive principles for providing socio-economic justice to women. Now, you all must be understood the affirmative action, that is the special provisions the government has to take to address the needs of the marginalized sections of the population, especially as far as if you look at the India, as far as India is concerned, who are all marginalized: scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, women. Women belong to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. These are the certain sections of the populations. They were discriminated based on caste, based on sex over centuries after centuries. So, to address and improve their status and positions, the government has to legislate certain special provisions to improve their conditions in the areas of health, education, and to improve their economic positions in the society. Let us see, the inclusive policy is part of the gender mainstreaming approach. So, here when you talk about the affirmative action, you need to understand the inclusive policy also. The 4th Conference on Women was convened in Beijing in 1995. In that conference, delegates agreed to denote the UN bodies that have played a catalytic and expert role in developing standards, especially with respect to women. They also sought to engage all other programs of the United Nations in examining gender related aspects of their ongoing work. This solution, commonly called gender mainstreaming, involves a process of assessing the implications for women and men on any planned action, including legislation, policies or programs in all areas and at all levels. So, inclusive policy means any policy, whatever the policy or the government makes, those policies certainly it needs to address the needs of the both male and female. Why are we talking specifically about the male and female means? As already I mentioned that the females and certain sections of the population in the society, especially in countries like in India, all over the world, every countries, certain sections of the population, they face discrimination based on caste, class, gender and other discrimination. So, if the government or if they do not address in that policy, if they do not bring policies to address the needs of these sections of the population, so they do not, it is not possible for them to get benefit out of that policy. So, inclusive policy or gender mainstreaming concepts clearly talk about the assessing the any policy or any programs whatever the government or any institutions or any organizations makes, they must assess the implications of that particular policy on men, women and other genders, and they including the not only policies, whatever the legislation they make, whatever the programs they formulate to address the certain conditions, they need to assess what type of implication it brings on male, female and other genders in all areas at all levels. Then only they could able to incorporate the needs of the every sections of the people in that particular policy. And the definition links gender with other issues such as violence, healthcare or political participation, and also makes a point emphasizing that gender is not only about women but also about women, men and the way either sex is affected. When you talk about gender, it is not only about the women, it is about the male, female and other genders, everyone. When you talk about gender means it is an inclusive concept, it was talking about everyone in the society. Then now we understood about the affirmative action and we understood about this gender mainstreaming, that is the inclusive policy. Let us understand what is substantive equality. The Government of India has follow up to the further actions and initiatives to implement the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, enacted the National Policy for Women 2001. The national policy has described 16 major heads, the measures to be taken by the Government of India. These are the 16 major heads. Under this, the government have to make necessary policies to address the needs of the every genders in the society. First, policy prescription, decision making, mainstreaming the gender perspective in development process, economic empowerment of women, social empowerment of women, violence against women, rights of the girl child, mass media, operational strategies, institutional mechanisms, legislations, gender sensitization, Panchayat Raj institution, partnership with the voluntary organization and international cooperation. Let us see, National Commission of Women Act 1990 was enacted by the Parliament to safeguard the rights and legal entitlements of women. Their current status and the various efforts can be examined under the following heads: social and legal empowerment of women, economic empowerment of women and political empowerment of women. These are the three heads we can assess the National Commission for Women Act 1990. First, let us see social and legal empowerment of women. In that, just let us see the education. When you talk about the education, it is important for both male and female to get an equal access to education, and that should be ensured. The second one is, when you talk about the education, curriculum is very important. Whatever you transact based on the curriculum, that should be gender sensitive, it should be addressed, the curriculum should be developed in a gender sensitive manner. So, the first one is that ensuring the equal access to education for women and girls. The second one is that developing the gender sensitive curricula. The next is then health. A holistic approach to women's health, which includes both nutrition and health services, that should be adopted. The reduction, like when you talk about the health, we need to address the reduce the infant mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, social and development health consequences in a gender sensitive manner. These are the issues needs to be addressed with regard to, like nutrition. You all know how the women are highly high risk categories when it comes to nutrition. In view of the high risk malnourishment and disease that women face at all the three critical stages, that is infancy, childhood, adolescence and reproductive phase, the government, based on that policy, focused attention should be paid to the objectives of meeting the nutritional needs of women at all stages of the life cycle. Next one is the providing the potable drinking water and sanitation is very important. You all must be seeing the seeing in a films in when they made films in 1980s and all, you must have watched those films, old films. In those films, the women, they used to walk like 2 or 3 kilometers to fetch the drinking water. So, even for sanitation, you all must be wondering, because of the lack of access to toilet facilities, for not only the women, they face violence. And they have to walk so many 2-3 kilometers to find a secure place to discharge their nature call. So, it is very important to providing the safe drinking water and sanitation facilities. So, special attention will be given to the needs of the women in respect of safe drinking water, toilet facilities and sanitation within accessible reach of households, especially in rural areas and urban slums. Next one is the providing the safe housing and shelter facilities for the women. Housing and shelter, women's perspective will be included, whether when it comes to housing and shelter, with regard to housing policies, planning of housing colonies and provision of shelter both in rural and urban areas. Next comes to environment. Women will be involved and their perspectives reflected in the policies and programs for environment conservation, restoration and control of environmental degradation. You all must be know that women are very much involved in the protection of environment. There is a ecofeminism theory. Based on the theory, if you look at that theory, the women are close to nature and male members are close to culture. So, always they think that because the women are close to the nature, nature is considered as inferior and culture is considered as superior. So, thus many of the times there is so much of environmental degradation. So, when it comes to environmental degradation, it is the women who face the difficulties if we lose the biosphere or natural forest and other natural resources. For example, the women, they depend on the nearest forest and other areas not only for their own food security. They used to collect the minor forest produce or they sell in the market. Through that, they able to do certain kinds of economic activities. So, the existing theories clearly establish that the women are close to nature and the male members are close to culture. Because they are close to culture, nature, they have so much of knowledge about the nature and how to preserve and conserve the nature in a sustainable manner, so that they can get benefit out of the natural resources. Next is science and technology. The programs will be strengthened to bring about the greater involvement of women in science and technology. Next important areas the government has concentrated is that legal empowerment. As regards of the laws for the achievement of national policy, many substantive and procedural laws have been amended and new laws have been enacted. For example, in the Hindu Succession Act 1956 has been amended in 2005 to make men and women have a same right to property. The Parliament amended section 5C and 8 of the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956 and it came into effect in May 2006. Against men's oppression of women, the Parliament enacted the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005, which came into force in 26/10/2006. The Parliament has also enacted the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Act 2006. Law is the most vital tool, as we all know, for bringing about social and economic changes. When we use the law wisely, effectively implemented, laws can provide the most peaceful and smooth means to bring changes in the life of the women. So, now we need to see the economic empowerment. Economic empowerment is one approach to enable women to realize their inherent knowledge, skills and competencies for creation of enterprises. Because that is a very important, if the women are equally empowered like a male members in the society economically, they will be treated like male members in the society. So, their contribution to socio-economic development as producers, already we all know the women do contribute to produce food crops and they do contribute so much of work, both formal and informal areas, as well as they mostly the women they involve in the subsistence production that will directly address the needs of the actually food security of the entire family members and the food security of the society. So, they are considered as the producers and workers that needs to be recognized in the formal and informal sector. Even the many of the women they involve in home based workers. As far as India is concerned, various ministries and institutions, organizations have working for the upliftment of women through implementing various schemes like Swarna Jayanti, Swarajkar Yojana, SGRY and these programs. Now it is not running by the state government, like few big non-governmental organizations like Awake in Karnataka, Maitri in New Delhi, Seva in Gujarat, Umit in Ahmedabad, CARE in West Bengal, they are all engaged in socio-economic upliftment of women. Next one is the political empowerment. You all know it is very important to empower women politically. So, the political institutions like parliament and state assemblies, even panchayats are the very important institution to take certain decisions on behalf of everyone in the society. Like a male members in the society, if the female also occupy minimum 33.3% or if the more than 33% of the women if they occupy in a political institution, certainly the whatever the policies they make, certainly we can expect gender sensitive policies. With that assumption, the 1/3 of reservation for women in panchayat came through the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. In the path breaking move to empower women at the grassroots level, the Government of India has approved a proposal to increase reservation for them in panchayat by 50% of the total seats. The government has decided to bring a bill to amend the article 243D of the Constitution to enhance reservation for women in panchayats in all tiers from current level of the 1/3 to at least 50% of the total seats. According to Article 243G of the Constitution, state legislatures may endow panchayats with such powers and authority as may be necessary to enable them to function as units of local self-governments, to prepare and implement plans or schemes for economic development and social justice, including those in relation to matters listed in the 11th schedule of the Constitution. Panchayat as such have a vital role to play in the welfare and development of the weaker sections of the society. Women, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, especially these are the weaker sections as far as India is concerned. Greater representation of these sections would enhance their voice in these bodies to promote inclusive governance, which is critical to inclusive growth. The enhanced reservation will be applicable to the total number of seats to be filled by direct elections, the offices of chairpersons and the seats and offices of the chairperson reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Enhanced reservation for women in panchayat will facilitate entry of more women into public sphere. This will lead to further empowerment of women and make panchayats more inclusive institutions to improve governance and public service delivery system. The extension of democracy at the grassroots level signifies the constitution of democratic government not merely at the top but also at the foundation level of the political system. Thus, democratic decentralization or Panchayat Raj aims at making democracy real by bringing the millions into the functioning of the representative government at the lowest level. At present, out of the total elected representatives of panchayats numbering approximately 28.1 lakhs, that is approximately 36.87% are women. With the proposed constitutional amendment, now mostly every state has an 50% reservation, and maybe so currently there are more than 14 lakh representatives as far as panchayats is concerned, and these amendments like the existing amendments will cover all the states and union territories except Nagaland, Mizoram, tribal areas of Assam, Tripura and hills of Manipur. So, emancipation of women through policies. Gender representation in politics was one of the many topics that the 23rd special session of the General Assembly touched upon. Under this title, quote, Women 2000, Gender Equality, Development and Peace for 21st Century, unquote, the first 5-day meeting reviewed the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action adopted at the 4th World Conference on Women in 1995. Delegates agreed that while progress had been made towards the full implementation of the goals set out in Beijing, barriers still remained. Thus, the final outcome document containing the political declaration and further action and initiatives to implement the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, unquote, was adopted at this special session. The entire lecture was based on the unit in the course BGSC unit 20 in the BGSC 001, that is gender sensitization, society, culture and change. Before summing up this, I would like to give you certain policies taken by the government based on the affirmative action and laws and policies, and quickly I would like to share with you all. First one is, if you look at that, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act or scheme, there 35% quota for women in employment and equal wages with the child care. Then Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005, the Criminal Law Amendment Ordinance 2013, it recommends that whoever commits sexual assault on his own life without her consent, who is living separately under the decree of separation or under any custom or usage, shall be punished with imprisonment. Then Maternity Benefit Act 1961, Janani Shishu Suraksha Yojana 2011, Pre-Consumption and Prenatal Diagnostic Technique, Prohibition of Sex Selection Act 1994, Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006, Indecent Representation, the Prohibition Act 1986, National Rural Livelihood Mission 2011, there is the special focus on single women, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, women with disability, reproductive, maternal, newborn, child and adolescent health, Mahila Samakya program, that is education for women's equality, Protection of Children from Sexual Offence Act 2012, Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956, Indian Penal Code Dowry Prohibition Act 1961, Equal Remuneration Act 1975, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan Program for Achievement of Universalization of Elementary Education 6 to 14 years 2000 to 2001. Then as we explained, 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts to provide reservation for women in the rural and urban local bodies, Hindu Succession Amendment Act 2005 granting equal inheritance right, Mahila Kishan Shashakti Kiran Pariyojana 2011, that is part of the National Rural Livelihood Mission that is to empower the women. These are the certain provisions I have shared with you with regard to formulation of policies and programs based on the affirmative action and mainstreaming, gender mainstreaming to address the needs of the women and women and other marginalized sections of the society. Thank you so much for listening. We will again meet in some other session. Thank you.